This video is brought to you by HalloCasa. Our tool transforms independent local real estate agents to global real estate agents. Create your own profile for free and get contacted by international investors. Sign up with the link in the description. Hello and welcome everyone to our 162nd session of HalloCasa. My name is Michael and today I'm talking to Phillip Gentile from Washington, D.C. Phillip is a results-driven real estate professional with deep experience in sales, marketing, and strategic development. Known for crafting effective sales strategies, he excels in identifying client needs, optimizing market opportunities, and delivering practical win-win business solutions. Phillip, I'm pumped to have you on the show. Why don't you introduce yourself to our audience?
Thank you, Michael. Yeah, my name's Philip Gentile. I'm in the Washington, D.C. area. I've been a real estate agent for 9 years now. I've always been on the investment side of real estate, helping new clients, seasoned investors, just throughout the whole process, is finding the property, acquiring it, lending, and just, sometimes they hire me. I have a lot of experience as being a general contractor, managing projects, getting permits, plans together, working with Department of Building and seeing things through. And then on the retail side, also own a staging company, HaloHomeStaging.com. You could look us up. And I'm a part of Villa Realty, which is newly for me. I was a franchise owner of Exit for the past 5 years, and I was with Exit Realty for 8 years, but I'm with Villa Home now. And yeah, that's pretty much my background in real estate.
You have so much of experience in sales and marketing and then jumping into real estate. First question is, what motivated you and what excites you about real estate in the first place?
There's two parts of it. Obviously, I remember back in high school, this is early 2000s. I used to, before we had iPhones where you could get an Apple subscription, I used to sell CDs out the back of my car for $5 to my friends. I'd get kind of like a bootlegger almost, right? And I just always have loved sales and just been in sales my whole life. And I figured, well, if I could sell a CD for $5, why can't I sell a house? On a much larger scale. And I think that goes for anybody in sales right now. If you're selling something, just think a house is, just putting a deal together. I mean, you're looking at 3% on some houses, they're 500,000, some houses are $1 million, some houses are 10 million, and you get a percentage of that. And,
what were the first steps when you started? Walk us through and maybe also some challenging times there regarding, okay, yeah, fair enough. It is definitely, let's say, much more profitable to sell a house versus a city, but then it's more complex. And what is basically certain traits which you have to ensure to overcome or to talking real estate?
Yeah, great question. So, I mean, I did like everybody else does in America. I went to graduate high school, went into college, graduated college, didn't really know what I wanted to do when I got out on the workforce. Just took like a job with a marketing degree, didn't really like it, felt like I was working 40 hours a week, traveling 20 hours a week just to get 2 days off on the weekend and be back there Monday. And then I got an email one day about getting a real estate license, and I just said, okay, well, let me try this. And, I got my real estate license within 30 days, and I had met another good friend of mine who became a mentor, and he had been doing real estate investing for 20 years. And he kind of took me under his wing, and we just started, he just started taking me to distressed properties and showing me the ugliest house in a neighborhood. And so I'm saying, like, Liz, this is gold in the dirt right here. You can, find houses like this and, it's more finding out what's the situation. How did the house get like this? The house didn't always look like this. So how did it get like this? Why is it like this now? And trying to create a deal from that, basically.
Your first sale, do you still remember it?
Oh yeah, I remember I wrote 300 offers before I got my first offer accepted. And it was a house in Baltimore, Maryland that was under contract we got it under contract. I think it was listed for like 50,000 and we got it under contract for like 30,000. And I think I still have the check. Let me see. Maybe it's in another wallet or yeah, I don't have it anymore, but I used to keep the check in my wallet. It was for $300, but it was just so motivating that, a $300 check, and I would keep it in my wallet and just look at it like, look, you could do this, and just try to do it on a larger scale. But yeah, I do
You did
remember that
your
sale.
you did your real estate license in Connecticut or in Washington,
No, I
D.C.?
did it in DC. I moved to the DC area from Connecticut about 8, 9 years ago now in 2016. And I just went right into the class because I was new out here. I didn't really know what I wanted to do. And yeah, I just fell in love with, the real estate, being in the investing side.
Regarding there, maybe also for other people, some tips and tricks. I hear a lot that jumping into real estate, since it's a lot of times commission based only, you should have like some savings for like 6 to 12 months and maybe go into rentals in the beginning to get like higher closure rates in the beginning. What's your tips there for someone who might want to jump?
Don't quit your day job. If you got a job that you're going 9 to 5, do this like at night. I mean, the internet is your friend, right? So you can browse the internet, browse for deals, look for deals, 24 hours a day, right? So that's how I started. I would go, and a lot of the real estate meetups are at nighttime anyways, like happy hour. So I would work my 9 to 5, and then I would just go straight up to a meetup. And the deals that I had locked up, I would start marketing those deals at the meetup and meeting people. And real estate is a networking business, right? You're not going to make any money if you don't talk to anybody. I talk to different people every day about real estate, and see what deals they got going on, how I can be involved, like how I can help market my deals to them. I mean, it's a word of mouth kind of business.
More sales agent or buyer's agent on your end?
Both. I do both. I do help a lot of sellers, but my niche is really helping buyers, really helping those people that um, don't own a home, don't know what to look for, an investment property. A lot of people now, they like to live in these luxury apartments with a gym and a pool, but they don't realize that they still have that FHA benefit. So yeah, you can live in the luxury apartment for $3,000 a month. But you could also start investing in real estate on the side. People know home ownership is a lot. I mean, my central air blew last week, and it was a $5,000 bill. It's a lot owning a home and being a homeowner. So, but that doesn't mean you can't get in the investing side.
That's a good segue, basically. Let's go a bit more into the technicalities and also there with regard to the international audience who might not be that familiar with, yeah, maybe some legal landscape and stuff. If, let's say we meet tonight at a meetup in Washington, D.C., and I say like, listen, I have like, I don't know, a bunch of money or whatever. What would be your first questions if I say, actually, I don't know where to start. I would like to go into real estate. I have some money. What is there your qualification process towards a potential buyer?
Sure, that's a great question. So, the first question always for a real estate agent to a potential buyer is, do you own a home? Right? Because if you own a home, you can't really, you probably used your FHA benefit on that home. If you haven't, if you don't own a home and you just want to, look at some deals, look at some real estate investing, there's FHA has a lending program called 203K, right? So you've got 203K where you can still put the 3.5% down on a home, but they'll put the construction budget and the home acquisition all in one loan, and you only got to put 3.5% down. And I work with buyers and help them and work. We're in a good market right now because we're kind of in a buyer's market again. Working with sellers who need to sell and say, hey, we want to purchase it for this price. Can you credit back, the buyer for their closing costs? So on a $400,000 to $450,000 construction loan and acquisition, a potential buyer with a 203K loan, they might only have to bring 10 to 15,000 to close on the house, and that's a great deal. That's something that a lot of people just don't know about, so they can't take advantage of it. And somebody else that owns a home and wants to look for another deal, there's hard money lending, there's private money lending. And those are, reimbursement loans. So I will say this to people too: when you're doing a hard money loan, understand that it's a reimbursement loan. So it's kind of the same thing where you're getting the acquisition of the home and the construction loan in one budget, but they call it draw at the table. A lot of these hard money lenders won't give you a draw at the table. So not only will you have to bring the cash to close it, you'll have to have some type of reserves to get the construction process going, getting demos started, plans, permits. And then once you have that, now the hard money lender will reimburse you and you can start moving forward on the next phase of the project.
You were very quick there for me, maybe also because it's so new to me. So I allow myself to ask there but more details. So I'm trying to explain that, and then you say where I'm wrong. So basically, it's definitely preferred that I have a home already, obviously, in underwriting towards a certain financial institution, which doesn't have to be paid off. Correct? It's not like paid off. It's just on my name, but I'm still paying off the
Correct.
mortgage.
Yes.
And then the other question is, how much is there any threshold regarding the value of the real estate which I have in order to basically be eligible? Because, okay, I could say, listen, we are still at the meetup tonight, and you say, well, you don't have a home, but okay, fair enough. You know what? Buy this 20,000 rundown real estate somewhere in the middle of nowhere.
That's why a lot of people, and that's a great question too. That's why a lot of people like to work with hard money lenders, because there's no income verification. There's no you don't have to submit taxes. They look solely at the deal you're presenting them, right? So all you have to do is say, hey, I want to buy this house. This is the scope of work for the construction budget, and this is what it'll sell for when it's finished. They'll just say, well, okay, well, show me a bank account, a retirement account, any type of account. Show me some liquidity to where you can cover 20% of the total cost, and you're good to go. They'll sign off on the paperwork, and you can get yourself into a deal.
And then from there, I go into the FHA one?
No. That's a hard money. FHA is if you don't own a home. You can only use that benefit if you don't own a home with FHA. If you don't own a home. So if you don't own a home, it's the hard money loan and a 203K FHA is pretty much the same loan. It's the construction budget and the home in one loan. But hard money, you're going to look at putting about 10% down, 20% if you have no experience, right? A hard money lender is like, well, why am I going to lend you this? You have no experience. There's ways around that, though. You could work with a fellow like me. We could create an LLC. I have multiple homes on my resume that I flipped in the past 5 years. Because one of the first questions a hard money lender asks you is, how many flips have you done in the last 36 months? And if you say I have none, you're going to have to put 20% down, depending on the lender. But if you do say, oh, well, my friend Philip or my friend John, whoever, he flips homes. Well, okay. Well, if you guys do the home together, you only have to put 10% down or 5%. In some cases, depending on experience, a hard money lender won't require you to put any money down if they like your portfolio, and you'll just pay the closing costs. And then we could work with the seller to even get the closing costs down. So I'm all about creating a deal, right? And that's what it's all about, is making, when you're looking at houses and you're looking to get into this business, it's about the deal, is creating a good deal and finding a good deal.
From there onwards, let's say I don't have a home yet, so we go for the FHA one. What would be then the next step? Saying like, listen, Michael, like, you're not really rich, so we have to go. We have to start low. What basically we're just gonna go for the 2 to 3%, which I have to put down, and then we go there, and it's like, how much do you have, and then we go from there.
Yeah. So FHA, they're gonna ask you for 2 years tax returns, and employment status, basically. So you send like your last 2 or 3 months of paychecks, 2 years tax returns, and you would get approved for a FHA loan. And those type of loans, 203K, they close within 30 to 45 days, I would say.
I then have to present also, obviously, the property, the valuation. Who does the valuation? That's normally the bank.
With any real estate transaction, there's an appraisal process. So 203K a lender will send their appraiser out. Now, if you have a good agent like me, and I've known this over the years, it's best to find out when that appraiser is going to be there, and you let them through the door. You meet the appraiser there. You bring the comps and comparables in the neighborhood and say, look, this house down the street sold for this much. The job as the agent, and I won't even put this as the onus on the buyer. As the agent, you want to make sure that house appraises, because that's the key to all this. That's how, once that house appraises, everything else is just paperwork. But once I have that appraisal back and it says that it appraised and they agree with my scope of work and the construction costs, your appraiser is your friend, and that's how you cement the deal.
You mean by being appraised that there's a certain quote on the listing, there's a certain market value on the listing?
Yeah, there's a certain market value, right? So if an appraiser comes out and says, you're paying 300,000 for this house, but this house is only worth 250. Now you've got an issue, right? You have to, they might not want, an underwriter might not want to underwrite the deal now because it doesn't make sense. So you have to put something in front of them that makes sense, first of all. And then, they might not agree with your construction budget. The house might be, need $100,000 in construction to get to that value. And you might have a construction budget of 50, right? So that's that, you have, the numbers have to make sense for one, but also you don't want to leave it up to the appraiser's discretion to, what that value is. You want to help them as best you can to show them, no, this is the true value and this is what the work is going to be.
Then I have the appraisal certifications or the papers, and then I go again to the institution regarding the FHA, and then they say, okay, perfect, green light, you get the loan.
Yeah, and then you'll get they'll do kind of their background and underwriting and see how much you have to bring to the table. And then what I like about the FHA is, out of pocket appraisal is $800, right? So they might ask you for some underwriting things that you have to pay the appraisal, but all this is going to be reimbursed at closing. So even if you did front $800 for the appraisal, I'm trying to think, like if there's a termite inspection, they have to pay $200. A mold inspector might have to come out. That's another $200. If you put it on a credit card and you get a receipt, the bank, when you go to closing, they will refund you everything you spent. So you'll get all that money back at closing. So that I do like that FHA program because they really do help you. And they also give you what's called a HUD consultant throughout the project, which they will come out and they will review after you close, obviously. They'll come out and review the work, right? So, this is a game where you have to have a lot of trust in the contractor, right? So I work with licensed contractors that have gotten approved for FHA deals. There's a heavy background check on contractors, and they call the stores that they have accounts at and verify, like, hey, is this this guy legit? Does he pays his bills on time? So I do like FHA products with the 203K loan because it's a lot of background checking on the contractor, and this is a trust business, right? I'm trusting you to build this home, and I'm spending all this money, or I'm taking all this money out. You don't want to have the contractor do a little work and run away with $30,000, right? So, the HUD consultant really helps in that aspect of making sure your house gets done time. Oh, and one thing I did forget to mention too, that's cool about the FHA 203K loan is that if the house is unlivable, right, and a project's going to take 6 months to do, they will wrap up 6 months of mortgage payments within the loan. So you don't have to pay 6 months of mortgage payments while this house is under construction as well. So it's just a great tool, for investors.
The other option, walk us through the other option then with the hard money. You mentioned the LLC. Either I'm already experienced, then that's fine, and I just eat the 20% basically, and I say, okay, whatever. Or you say, hey, listen, let's create an LLC, and then you say basically, let me put into that LLC already those 5 flipped or 3 flipped houses, which I did in the past, which I haven't used for any other LLC, or how does that work?
So the hard money lenders and / private money lenders, they want to see experience. That's a big thing with them. So yes, there's no income verification. There's no tax returns needed. They just want to see your liquidity, that you have the money to do this. But they want to know that you have some type of experience, right? So say you come to me and you say, well, I got all this cash, but I have no experience. they're going to ask us to create an LLC to put the home in anyways, right? Lenders ask you to put homes in LLCs because, something happens or whatever. It's not going to really, it won't hurt your personal name, so that's why people put stuff in LLCs. You can add someone, and then me and you, we create an operating agreement, right? You could have 100% ownership, or you can maybe give me, say, okay, well, I want to partner with you. You're bringing the expertise, you're bringing something into the deal. I'll give you 10% or whatever have you when the deal closes, and the operating agreement. So all of this is negotiable, but like I said in the beginning, the thing to keep in mind is you want to create the best deal for yourself, right? Some people might not want to put 20% down. They might want to only do 10%. And, when you get into this business and you start, the great thing about a lot of these lenders is once you do one deal with them, the next deal is always going to have better terms, right? So you might have to eat that cost if you don't want to say, well, I don't want you to be a part of my LLC. I want the entire 100. Okay, well, you're going to have to put the 20% down. But after we get through this and we go find the next project or next deal, that's if we work with that same lender, they might only ask you to put 15 or 10% down, right? So that's the thing, is just when you get in this, just working with the right people, making sure you get through the deals, and just keeping that lender happy.
From there onwards, let's say perfect inspection, you mentioned the appraisal process, you mentioned the paperwork. Then it's going to, which institution do you go again to the, it's not the registry or the land registry, or where do you exactly go in order to basically finalize the contract agreement?
So once we have, the first thing you want to do is get a contract, right? So, Jane down the street said she wants to sell me your house for, 200,000, right? Okay, we got a contract today, we sign, I have a contract. Then I'm going to take that ratified contract and I'm going to, shop it to some lenders, right? And I'm going to work with the lender that gives me the best terms, right? So they'll give you, ask for a term sheet. You ask for that lender a term sheet, and it's all based on, credit and what your credit score is, right? So if I've got, and the good thing about hard money lenders too, if you've got a 600 credit score, you can still do the deal. It might be not the greatest of terms, but that doesn't mean you can't do the deal still, right? So you get your term sheet. You say, okay, I want to go with you, Michael, my lender here. I want to go with you. Okay, sign the term sheet. Now they do a credit pool, and then that's when we see what exactly they can offer us in terms of terms, right? So once they run the credit, and then after that, then now you can. It's just like if you went to go buy a car, right? If you went to go buy a car, once that dealer runs your credit, it's, what I mean. Like you can go to other places to get soft pools now because you already had your credit ran, right? So that's another thing people don't realize too, is that the credit bureaus, once they see like you've applied for a mortgage, you can do soft credit pools with other lenders, so it doesn't look like you have 10 different credit pools. You could do it within a 45-day period without hurting your credit. So that's what I tell people too, is always shop for the best deal. After we get that and we get to the closing, they'll tell us how much money we need to bring to the table on the final term sheet. And that's it. When we close within 30, 45 days. And like I said, I start projects the day of closing, right? So after you sign and we get the keys, we're in there ready to start the demo process and get the job started.
Perfect. So you say Jane on the road is saying, listen, I want to sell. Then I need, as a buyer, let's say a mortgage check, you call it pre-approval credit score. But then you say I need another one afterwards, again, once the offer is on the table, in order for them to pull it, or how does that work? Sorry for the, let's say, basic question, but I'm very curious here.
Yeah, so you can go out, like say your neighbor wants to sell you the home, right? Your neighbor's going through stuff, their grass is this high, and they're like, I can't afford to be living here anymore. And you make an offer and on the house or whatever, and you guys come to whatever price, and you guys get a ratified contract. You then take that contract and you can bring it to a hard money lender, and just say, hey, I'm trying to, my next door neighbor, she needs about, $50,000 to fix up this home that she's selling me for $200,000, and the house is going to be worth, 400 and $450,000, something like that. That lender will then say, okay, well, what's your credit look like? If you're doing hard money, okay, let's pull your credit. Once you pull your credit, you get a term sheet, you sign off on a term sheet. Now the sale can happen, right? So they'll do what's called, it's a whole process, right? So you need what's called a title company or settlement company to basically pull what they call the title of your home to see if you have any liens, if you have, something, if it was passed down through an estate wrong. I deal with I'm a problem solver as a realtor and as an investor and in helping investors, because like I said in the beginning, a lot of these homes, when they get to, looking distressed, they all have a story to them. So there could be tons of stuff that could be come back in the title search, and the title company will navigate and help us get this title clear. So we get basically a clear to close from them. Once we have a clear title, now we'll schedule a date for the seller to come, the buyer to come, sign closing documents, and then the lender will fund the deal. And then that's when the keys will come to you as the buyer.
So, and that's actually another appraisal process from the title company, correct? So we have like the pre-approval, we have the appraiser where you definitely like need to make sure that this is like in your favor. Then we have again sort of like, yeah, we have the credit pull from the mortgage lender based on the credit score. And then we have the title company saying like, listen, all the paperwork, is it okay, blah, blah, is there anything outstanding, which might it not be even like impacting the end value of the property sometimes?
It's going to affect the seller more than it's going to affect the buyer, right? So, like in Washington, D.C., there's a lot of vacant homes. In a lot of cities around America, there's vacant homes. And they have a whole department that's in the Department of Building in every city where they come out and they see these vacant homes and they'll put a sticker on the door, right? So you might not even live in the home anymore. You might be out of state and your aunt Lucy left you a house and she just recently passed away, right? And now you own this house. You haven't been to this house in years. You live, 5 states away, or you're international. You have to fly back to handle all these things. The house can be considered vacant. And then that's a whole process to get the house out of vacancy from Department of Building. But I say all these things to say is that as a buyer or realtor, you could use these as negotiation tactics to negotiate, like I said, a better deal for yourself, make it a deal, right? And when you start looking at real estate investing as a business, as opposed to just home ownership, that's when you can make a lot of money.
You are very good at also foreclosures and distressed homes, correct? Tell us a little bit there. How, first and foremost, like, is there a database in Washington, DC itself? How do you get those? And then also, how do you market them? Do you put them on your website, on listing services and stuff?
So a lot of things people do. We call them in real estate terms, we call them bird dogs. Where it's a process called driving for dollars. So they might drive and see a vacant property, right? And then you can look up right on your phone on your county's website. For Washington, D.C., it's dc.gov, right? And I can look up, if you Google, your state's tax records and you get to that landing page, you type in that home address, it'll give you the name of the person or the LLC that owns that property. Right. And then you can do, 411.com, or there's other, skip trace basically is what it's called. There's a whole bunch of different skip trace apps out there, and you type in that name or that LLC and it'll give you any public phone number it has for that person or company. And then you could call them directly and just say, hey, you own this house. I see that you own this house. Do you know that, it's a vacancy sticker on the house? You know that the house has got the gutters falling off, the roof is caving in. Hey, I'll make an offer on your house right now. and people drive by these houses every day, going to work, going here, going there, and we're not looking at them because it's an ugly house. It's an abandoned house. But that doesn't mean there's not a deal there or some, a way for you to make some money.
You have a lot of experience regarding helping buyers to get good deals, and you just mentioned actually, it might not look fancy or sexy, but this is sometimes where you probably also have the best deals because you just flip it a little bit, you refurbish, you do some investment, and then suddenly you have like a very good deal. Give us like there with all your information, all your experience, maybe some data points, some angles where you look at, which you also give tips and feedback towards potential buyers. Say, hey, listen, I think I have like sort of a gold nugget because it fulfills like my invisible checklist or even visible maybe in your database.
Yeah, so I go above and beyond. I mean, I do stuff like I'll call banks like credit unions or neighborhood banks and say, "Hey, do you have any houses? You have an inventory list of short sales?" Because remember, a lot of these houses are bought with mortgages, right? So what happens when someone defaults on their mortgage? They lose their house to the bank, right? And then the bank goes through a pre-foreclosure and a foreclosure process, right? So those homes become available to the public before they go to the auction, right? You could a lot of times you can negotiate with the bank, and that's what I do a lot of times too. Is I'll negotiate with the bank directly to acquire these homes for clients of mine, and they'll pay the banks will pay you a real estate commission on these homes, right? So you could find great deals through the banks because the banks, they're gonna sell it to you for obviously market value. But if the house needs a ton of work, you could get a nice discount on the home, as you would a car, right? If you're buying, a car, that's why a lot of people, instead of buying brand new off the showroom, they might buy a year or 2 year old car because there's such a significant discount on the car. It's the same way with homes. Banks look at it as just paper. They don't have real money invested because once they unload that home, they sell another mortgage to somebody else. So yeah, it's a great tactic too. Is go to your local banks.
You are operating mainly in Washington, D.C. Is there a certain neighborhood you are operating specifically where you definitely like have the most market knowledge, specific neighborhoods, and basically where you're operating geographically?
Yeah, that's another great question. So you have DC is separated by coordinates: northwest, southwest, northeast, southeast. So northwest they call Northwest DC Uptown. That is legitimately the closer you get to the White House and the Capitol buildings, the higher the real estate purchases are. Those are all the places where you want to live in DC. Those are, the fun places, like the cities. Then you have the upcoming areas you have in Southeast. So I don't know if you saw in the news, but there's been an abandoned stadium called RFK where the football team, the Washington Commanders, played for in the 80s and 90s. And they just announced that they're reviving that stadium now. And they're going to bring a dome with a glass ceiling. I mean, this is a billions of dollar project where it's going to be all new shopping center down that way, all new condos and apartment buildings. And not only they're announcing possibly the Super Bowl coming to Washington, D.C. in the next 5 years, but also possibly the World Cup, right? So that's going to bring a lot of international eyes onto D.C. And that RFK Stadium is located in Anacostia, Southeast DC. And you can find a lot of great homes that need work done, are flippable homes in that area that's right by RFK Stadium. So it's a great time to be looking to purchase real estate in DC, in my opinion.
apart from that neighborhood or area, anything else you would say like, listen, this definitely I have like my eyes on.
Oh yeah, you have. So you have on in Northeast DC. It's a subdivision. It's called Trinidad. H Street corridor, which basically they have the trolley that comes through. There's all brand new restaurants on that area. It's basically a whole strip of new restaurants, new lounges. That's the nightlife is big in DC with lounges and restaurant and 5-star restaurants. That's like one of the first things I noticed in DC was the amount of shopping, lounges, restaurants, just upscale environments. And then they have it's DC is known for their row homes, right? So you have all these modernized row homes. I mean, we lived in the 90s, early 2000s, 80s. They built homes. It was very compartmentalized. So as where there were families, right? We had our living room, we had our dining room, we had a kitchen. It was all separated. Now you go into these new homes, it's all open concept. Everything is modern. So it's like I could, if I'm in the kitchen cooking, I could see you in the living room watching the TV. That's kind of how homes are built now, and they look cool now. That's one of the reasons why I love real estate so much is just the cool how cool homes look now compared to back in the day.
Let's talk taxes. What is the tax which I have to pay as a buyer? Do I have to pay any stamp duty or anything when I buy, or is it all to the seller? And then
So
also, yeah,
that's another
please.
great question. So typically on a real estate sale, taxes are divided in 6 months, the first 6 months and the second 6 months of the year. And that's how it's divided when you go to close the sale, right? So when I'm going to buy a home, the seller might be responsible for these first 6 months of property taxes of the year, and then I might be responsible for the last 6 months, right? But if it's a good deal or a great deal, I might not have a problem paying for, and it's a way to get the seller to sell me the house, covering the closing costs, basically paying those taxes 4 to 12 months. So it takes some pressure off of the seller, right? And puts a little bit more money in their pocket, right? Everything in real estate is negotiation. Now, there's other tax benefits too, right? So people don't realize this, like, when you're buying and flipping and selling a home, you're doing all of this in a matter of about 12 months, right? A big project might take you 9 to 10 months and another 30 to 90 days to list it and sell it. That would require you to pay capital gains tax, because if you're making 6 figures, it's just like a job, right? So if I'm making $100,000 to $150,000 in profit or more from flipping a home within 9 to 12 months, Uncle Sam's going to come and there's going to be taxes. But the great thing about real estate, which you can't do this with stocks or anything else, you can open up a custodial account, have that when you go to sell the home on the other side of the transaction after it's fixed up and renovated, and move the money directly into custodial account, and then buy more real estate with that money out of the custodial account for your next deal. So it's called tax deferring, right? So that's actually how Donald Trump made all his money, is that he would do these big projects and sell all these big buildings, and he'd put the funds in a custodial account and then buy more real estate, because the custodial account, after you put money in there, will give you believe it's 60 days to find another property to use the funds to buy it with. And you could just keep doing this and doing this and doing this. And once you've made a certain amount of money with it, so say you say, okay, well, I want some money now, you can avoid being taxed on the lump sum and only be taxed on what you withdrawn. Or maybe you start getting into buying an apartment building after you flipped a couple properties, and now you have an apartment building. You could refinance the loan that you do the apartment building with and pull some money out for yourself, right? So there's just a lot in real estate. We call it different ways to skin a cat. And there's just a lot of different ways to protect your money and make money in real estate.
Yeah, it sounds like you're creating your own financial product almost, to say, listen, I am he is selling 5 different properties right now via flipping, I don't even, and please prove me wrong or say that where I'm wrong, I don't even have to create a new legal entity. I can do that without an LLC. I can put into a custodial account within, you said like 3 to 4 months. I just have to reinvest that into something else, and I don't have to pay tax on it. And potentially, I can also use that money in order to, well, I can use it for construction purposes. Is that correct?
Correct. Yeah, you could just, keep tax deferring the money. Like if I keep flipping houses and just buying more houses to flip, now I can, and it goes back to the lending conversation, right, that we had, right? So if I could show the bank that I've been flipping and that I have a custodial account that's getting all this money and I'm buying more real estate with, now the bank will, might give me a loan lending on my assets, which I work with a lot of clients that own a lot of properties and have good relationships with the bank. And they will give them loan because the bank wants you to invest in real estate. If you go to any of your local banks and say, well, how can I get you to allow me to invest based with the assets I have? They might give you some favorable terms to start investing in real estate today based on what the assets you have. And a lot of people don't even know that.
How low can you go with the interest rate when you have like not only a very good credit score, but you are basically you're going in and out with the bank and getting like so many mortgages, and they already know like, listen, Philip Gentile is like a good guy. We know exactly like
So I
he's
have various different clients. So I have clients with no experience, right? If you go to no experience with a hard money lender, the interest rate, I'm not going to lie, is going to be high. Your interest rate is going to be about 11, 12%. It's a 1-year term with the hard money loan. So they expect you to buy a house, do the construction, and sell it all within a 12-month period. So you have to keep that in mind as well. The good thing, though, about real estate is that even after that 12-month period, when the loan is due, you can refinance into something else, right? So that if the house doesn't sell for whatever reason and you need to get out of that loan, you could always refinance and look at other options. Maybe you throw a renter in there. Maybe and that's another thing you look at too is like, okay, well, if I refinance, my mortgage is going to be this much. It's going to be $2,000 a month mortgage, but people are paying the rent to live in these neighborhoods, $2,500 a month. So you could throw a renter in there, refinance, and collect $500 a month while paying down your mortgage long term, and go do another project, right? And then now you have an asset that's cash flowing. So the banks will look at that as like, okay, you have some cash flowing assets, and that goes back to getting more favorable terms for the people who are lending you the money.
You just mentioned cash flow. How's your stance there regarding cash flow generating properties versus appreciation based? What is basically there like more your focus?
So, yeah, so I mean, I have a client right now. We listed a property. Like I said earlier in the conversation, there's been a lot of federal layoffs in the Washington, D.C. area where it's taken a lot of buyers, out of the market. And I had a listing recently that, we were dropping the price. We weren't even getting any showings because, the buyer pool has, slowed down tremendously. But then an agent called me and said, hey, I have a client that has a housing voucher from the government that is paying for a 5-bedroom house, because houses happen to be 5-bedroom, $7,300 a month. And my client just refinanced at, I believe $5,800 a month. So now we're in the process of doing the paperwork for the voucher client, and my client's going to cash flow $1,500 a month now, and hopefully, pay down, and obviously, pay down the mortgage. And the good thing about that is that you're not relying on, with a housing voucher from the government, you're not relying on the tenant paying you. This is not going to be a late payment. The government is going to pay you as long as the government is running every month for that house. So like I said, and there's just a lot of great ways, even if, say you lost money, right? We don't like to lose money, but say you did lose money on a real estate investment. A lot of people don't realize that you can write that off for the next 3 years off your taxes. So, there's a lot of pluses. And I work with a lot of clients I work with one client who works in the emergency room, graveyard shift overnight. I work with another client who's a neurologist. These are another client's an attorney. They're high income clients, right? So they have to invest in things like real estate to avoid paying a high tax bill, right? So remember, I said you could open up a custodial account too to protect, your profit from the flips. But you also can, if you're investing in real estate and you're a high income earner, you could also, protect your wages too, without being taxed much higher at the end of the year because you're an active real estate investor. So there's just a lot of tax benefits too to someone who's just a high income earner, no matter where they are.
I'm realizing that you're not only a real estate agent, you're really like an expert at navigating and being able to navigate the stakeholders and understand exactly who to talk to and who to basically reach out to. So you don't only have like a network, but also exactly know exactly like where to go after. The last stakeholder I'm actually curious about regarding your management and your administration is the lawyer. Where does the lawyer come into place where you say, listen, perfect, you are like financially on top of the game? And then second of all, how important is it and in which elements does the lawyer come into place?
Yeah, so like the lawyer or any high income earner, they work a lot of hours a week, right? They don't have time to be out there looking for deals. I mean, looking for deals in real estate, like I said in the beginning, I made 350 offers before I got something under contract. I can call, if you give me 10 houses and I talk to 10 different people, I could probably get you one of those houses. I've become that good at negotiating because of my knowledge and understanding the problems people have with a distressed property. And not only just helping my client, but also helping that seller, right? That seller needs to find a way, like, I can't afford this. I need to, or I need to cash out before I lose it, right? There's a lot of sellers that are in a distressed situation, distressed property, or hoarders that, you go in their house and there's just garbage and just stuff. You can't even move around in there. You can't even breathe in there. It feels good to also help them get out of that situation and getting, some money in their pocket and getting that burden of home ownership off of them that, they can't help themselves anymore.
Right now, how does your daily week and daily work week look like generally as a real estate agent and as an
Um,
expert?
every day, every morning, I go on the multiple listing service. I see what's out there, what's available. I look at the notes that people are putting, and I see different things, right? So, like I said before, it was a seller's market for a couple of years now, where a lot of gentrification was happening in DC. A lot of sellers knew that their homes were worth more no matter what condition they are in. Now it's kind of switched to a buyer's market, right? So I'm dealing with a lot of banks with going through their process of because they've taken over the home. There were so many homes in DC in the 90s and early 2000s in the neighborhoods that I was talking about in like Northwest, and they paid $50,000 for the home and now it's worth $500,000, right? So, but obviously these people have become elderly now. Like we're talking about 30, 40 years ago that they bought these homes. And, when you're elderly and you don't have a mortgage, there's companies that prey on the elderly they're called reverse mortgage companies, where, an elderly person might have paid off their home and have no mortgage, but have no cash either. A reverse mortgage company might get in contact with them and say, hey, look, I could get you $100,000 today, right? But you're going to have a mortgage again. And someone who's elderly and not working and only living off Social Security, they might not be able to afford that mortgage, but they want that 100 or 200 or $300,000. And elderly people might do this without even telling their children, and just have the money and then lose the house that way. or they pass away and there's no value and the reverse mortgage company owns the house. Now I have to deal with the reverse mortgage company to, initiate what's called a short sale, where they take less than what the loan was on the house. So, typically during my day, I will look online for houses, talk to, I'm on the phone, just cold calling, agents. I'm calling my people that are wholesalers, that are bird dog. Hey, what do you got? What deals do you got? Talking to them. And then, if I find something that interests me, I'll just hop in the car and go over there and see it. And then, I'll get back to after I've laid eyes on it, I get back, I write an offer, and, now we're negotiating. So to be in this business and do what I do, you always have to have an inventory. You always have to be negotiating deals and finding homes. And, that's just my day to day on what I do. It's kind of like planting seeds.
How many deals do you have right now on average, basically, in your pipeline?
Right now I have a couple listings, about 2 or 3 listings that are in DC right now. I have a couple of deals. I always have deals that have title issues, like how we were speaking about before. And I say it's like planting seeds, because we could get under contract today and might not be able to go to closing or sell that house for 90 or 120 days. It just depends on what's wrong with the house, what's stopping us. So, trying to navigate that course of what's stopping us to get to the closing table. So, and I have a day where I have a closing, right? And I make, a nice paycheck, and then I just, keep it rolling, keep doing, different things.
Do you only work under exclusivity, or do you also share with other brokers?
I share with other brokers. We share the love. I'm not. I work with what's called they're called wholesalers. So I'm just looking to work with anybody who has a deal, right? So I might not even have the contract. Somebody else might have the contract, and they call me and say, "Hey, I got this contract, whatever. I'll sell you my contract for X amount, and then I have a client, and I could sell it to them for X amount or Y amount, and we do the deal that way." So it's just, I spend most my days and nights just not only marketing my own deals, but talking to people about their deals and seeing if I have clients that could come in and possibly purchase their deals.
Great. Sounds good. Philip, I know your time is limited. You gave us so much of great information. I don't even know where to start. You jumped directly into the entire buying process, guided us through the entire elements regarding financing, from both sides, the entire element regarding qualification and the entire interest elements, and making sure that I'm getting pre-approved, and then going from there towards the closure. Taxes, we talked about the Washington DC area, where to buy, what neighborhoods are interesting, appreciation versus cash flow generating objects, tips and tricks for first-time buyers. And also, you really understood, or you really showed us how much of experience you have and how to navigate the entire market. It's very impressive. And I think you gave us a very interesting idea of how complex that is, especially navigating all those stakeholders. Is there anything else you would like to share with the audience which we haven't tapped into today?
If you want more information on deals, or you want to know how to reach me, philiptherealtor.net, that's my website. You go there, put in your information. I respond quickly. And just, keep searching for deals, keep investing in real estate, keep making money.
Perfect. Thank you so much, Philip. Definitely put your contact information in the show notes, and also making sure that people know exactly that when they are interested in investing, both selling and also buying, to reach out to you if they're interested, especially in the Washington DC area.
Yeah, and anywhere else, and on Instagram, Philip the Realtor on Instagram. That's my handle too, so you can follow me on there.
Philip, thank you so much. I wish you a good day and good afternoon in Washington DC, and sending big hugs.
Thank you, Michael.
Cheers.
Bye.
This video is brought to you by HalloCasa. Our tool transforms independent local real estate agents to global real estate agents. Create your own profile for free and get contacted by international investors. Sign up with the link in the description.